If the eyes are blindfolded, what perceptions will act as guides, and what will act as effective signals? Our work this term has been thinking about and exploring this question. From the perspective of a visually impaired person, but also from the perspective of a designer. The project site is set in Malabar Beach, and Sydney, a city with an extreme abundance of coastal bathing areas, where the love of sea, sand and sunbathing is ingrained in the bones. The aim of the project was to create a support structure around the beach that would help the visually impaired to experience and participate in the beach atmosphere to a greater extent. This work is a translation of the Fish Storm. This large and spontaneous group activity is magical and directed. I wanted them to become handrails in the space, guiding people to different locations, or even to be the space itself, with the fish carrying people forward, and people walking through them, feeling briefly like they are in an underwater world. Just let the fish lead you to your destination. The fish storm is one of the more unusual of the untouchable items because it is constantly changing and can be changed by touch. Changes in currents, water temperature and water quality can all affect the formation of a storm. There are 3 patterns of movement between individuals moving within a school, namely separation, cohesion and alignment, and the behavior of the school is somewhat similar to that of a population, and I hope that by studying the patterns of movement, I will be able to gain insight into the way in which different movement spaces are formed. The fish storm has 3 stages, from the clam stage when it encounters an external shock to the emergency stage and finally the regroup stage when it reaches equilibrium again. Below is a simplified image of the 3 stages. To test the user experience, I have used clay to materialize the image, simulating the movement of the fish and the flow of the ripples around the fish. The models were touched blindfolded and the movement of the test subjects' fingers was observed to see how they perceived the textures and how well they accepted the different textures. Pattern plates were then designed to represent the fish circulation with a carved groove on wood and a movable plastic fish model to represent the directionality of the fish. These will be translated into the subsequent architectural details. Imagine what kind of light we would see if we were in a school of fish. What are the signposts for our way forward? From the behavior of the school of fish to the production of architectural space, we apply the pattern of fish movement layer by layer to the various details of the building. From the individual acting alone to the aggregated group gradually, I analyze the comparison between the school of fish and the crowd in terms of the manner of behavior, the purpose of the behavior and the possible psychological state of the behavior. The process of moving from an individual alone, to his integration into the flow of a small number of people, and finally his stay in a large group, has the universality of the flow of human activity. An analogy to the movement of a school of fish will yield some simple patterns of spatial shape formation. For example, clustering into spheres and mobility places can be tube-like. We set up behavior in different spaces and can classify spaces into 3 categories: clustered spaces, such as playground, beach, mobile spaces but with short stays, such as gallery, and more intimate spaces, such as lookout point. When a person is in an underwater space, surrounded by fish, the light they can see is influenced by the movement of the fish and the ripples of the water. A small number of point lights, which are directional, can be used to guide the exhibits in the gallery. Aggregate light sources, made up of numerous light sources, guide people in clusters and can be used to converge people to resting spaces. Linear light sources, which are fluid, are used to guide people along the walkways. The water flow textures translate into a bumpy to textured floor, which is used to guide the movement of the blind cane across the floor as well as to show the different types of spaces. The colors range from blue to orange to represent the degree of crowd gathering. People move from an overall flow to a tree-like dispersal to various cluster spaces, or from various places converging into one space. The model of fish movement can be translated into handrails and indicative textures on the walls to indicate spaces to stay and read information. On the wall facing the pool, There are handrails of different heights for children and adults and a tactile pattern on the streamlined handrails to remind people that they can stop for a short time and feel the sound and sunlight. Under the wall there is an opening for the sea to flow in at high tide. On the other wall of the gallery there are signposts guided by protruding wall tiles that provide a texture of the marine life. Depending on the skeletal contours of the marine life and the dynamic shape of the waves, the passage space can be reduced to a cylindrical shape, varying from a handrail in a fully open space, to a semi-open pavilion, to a closed passage space with open windows, depending on the degree of opening and closing of its structure. The above studies constitute my architectural details. When working on the site analysis, if the fish could move freely in the water space, would there be any difference from the crowd? What would influence their flow? And what kind of space could they create? Based on the laws of fish movement obtained from previous studies, I modeled the clustering and dispersal paths of fish throughout the Malabar beach. From different plane heights, and different starting points of movement. This was used to find easy walking paths and places where tactile plates could be set up. If the fish could reach the shore space, the fish would diverge in the ocean pool, where the topography and natural environment influence the movement. Mapping shows the simulated movement of the fish as they depart from and pass through the shore and water respectively. I then simplified the flow of the fish and placed it in a table to study the formation of the aggregation space. Here is the formation of the build shape, from the fish swarm to the 2 tunnels and 1 pod. Our building hopes to achieve these SDGs, providing the necessary assistance to the visually impaired while allowing them to experience more activities in the building as normal people do, and to be treated with respect. To eliminate the unequal impact of physical impairment on them. It provides more information about marine life and stimulates the interest of people in marine life and phenomena and inspires the conservation of marine ecology. The building takes into account the use of people with disabilities and will provide accessibility throughout. This extends the range of independent activities available to them and reduces the need for escorts. More information points will be created to give a variety of information beyond the visual, so that visually impaired people can get a comprehensive view of the seaside environment from all senses. Provide equipment for children to play and use so that they can play independently of their parents and receive more information on visual impairment and marine life. Provide sufficient and clear information at all turn-offs to make the flow of activities clear and easy to find. Different forms of uninterrupted handrails are installed to guide people along the route. Making the most of the surrounding environment to create different architectural landscapes and experiences, offering ways to get closer to nature. Optimizing the conditions of use and facilities of the site to create a safer and more comfortable space for all types of people, while adding to the aesthetics of the site. I have also speculated on the potential users of the building and assumed the possible spatial needs. We created 2 accessible pool entrances. One uses the existing walkway and adds a tactile handrail, the other has an information desk and entrance directly from street level, through the light corridor to the lookout point. This allows them to have a safer access to the seaside environment, to feel the sun, the wind and the sea. The building also provides differentiated spaces for individual and group movements. The new building is divided into 2 levels and will have 3 clear routes of movement, depending on the entrance. There are also braille maps at various points, depending on the spatial experience. The pod is in a rocky area, with a cavity in the floor from which the rocks can be touched more safely. Sunlight enters through the top hole, creating a different light experience. From the original terrace you can access the tactile gallery, which provides a shelter for resting, a shower and a toilet. Following the handrails on the wall and the tactile pattern, one can find more information points and experiences about the pool. Finally, you reach the sea area, where you can feel the sea at the lookout point. Alternatively, people can go directly from the entrance of the parking area to the information desk and then through a light corridor to the lounge area, which is more open to the sea. This is more private. Finally, I have designed some small chairs using a model of a school of fish, so that you can feel what it is like to sit in a school of fish. This is my design, let the fish lead your way.